It's a beautiful day in January for doing a bit of seaside ID. I'm going to try and focus mostly on seaweeds because you can eat them. Maybe get a few other bits and pieces in there as well. I'm just so excited to get to the seaweeds. Okay, so let me say some things about seaweeds before I get much further. Number one, seaweeds are pretty much all edible, at least around Britain. You should check with the Environmental Protection Agency to make sure there's no effluent coming out of the sides of the coasts here, to make sure it's clean enough to eat. And your best selection will always be at low tide. You just have a more diverse range because that's where more seaweed's going to grow. They'll be cleaner and they're less likely to be really dead. Don't ever eat any of the seaweeds that you see lining the top of the beach like that because they're probably dead and they're probably pretty disgusting. Okay, let's go. Okay, so I've just found this nice bit of cuvee, just to give you a quick rundown of the different parts of seaweeds in general. So what I'm zooming in on now, that's called the holdfasts. This elongated structure in the middle, that's the stipe. And up here, these flappy bits that you usually think of when you think of seaweed, that's the fronds, just there. So the interesting thing about the holdfast, it does look really root-like, but it's not a root. It just keeps the seaweed anchored down, but it doesn't take in any nutrients. And the other interesting thing about seaweeds is that they are, well, they're algae, which means they don't have any of the woody tissue that is required to hold themselves up. That's why they like the water, because the water keeps them held up. But otherwise, when the tide goes out like that, they just lie flat, because they just don't have the structure to keep themselves upright. So before harvesting the seaweed, think of lettuce. If you pull the whole lettuce out of the pot, you can eat the lettuce, but you won't have any more. It's the same with the seaweed. If you pull it right off the rock, you can still eat it, but you've literally just upended an entire plant for no good reason. So what you can do is you can snip little bits of it off, never take more than you need, and just use the nice fresh parts of it, and then it can grow back year after year. Good bit of conservation advice there for you. Doesn't this guy look like an alien with two eyes? Whoa, hello, it's me. Okay, so what we have growing off this little rock here is some egg rack. It's one of our fucus species, and you can recognize it by the egg-shaped sacs that are in it just here. Not to be confused with bladder rack or spiral rack, which also have these. But in a slightly different shape. Okay, so one of your ways of identifying egg rack is if it is got this dude on it. See that little bit of fuzz that's just sitting on it there? That's got the Latin name Polysiphonia lanosa. I hope I pronounced that right. But basically it grows as an epiphyte on egg rack. And you can find it in rock pools and things like that. Evidently not important enough to have its own common name, because it's only got the Latin name, so far as I'm aware. But it grows on egg rack, so that's a good way of identifying both species in one. So as the tide kind of goes out, we start to see more and more seaweeds, because they all kind of have different tolerances to being out of the salt water. Right here we've got lava, or nori. That's this guy that's just hanging right off the rock like a big old wet blanket. It's only about 1 cell thick. Let's see if I can get that a bit sharper. There we go. So when it's hanging off the rock like that, it looks kind of almost completely black. But if you take a bit out, just like that, you can see how incredibly thin and delicate it is, and it's only a single cell thick. And this is the stuff, it's nori in Japanese. This is the stuff that your sushi seaweed is made out of. It's absolutely delicious to eat. So right here we've got a nice bit of serrated rack, or Fucus serratus. If you want the Latin, you're probably thinking, "Doi bo, that looks like every other seaweed that you've shown us." If you look a bit closely, you can see these teeth right at the edge here, and that's how it gets the name serrated rack. It's got these teeth running up the margins there. Wonderful. Okay, so here we have a nice piece of Laminaria hyperborea, or QV in the common parlance. It looks really, really similar to kelp in that it's quite thick, this olivey brown colour, but it's more kind of palmate than kelp. It grows kind of in a semicircle like that, and you can tell it apart from kelp because the stipe, which is this part right here, actually has a little bit of texture to it. So if you touch it with your hand, you can feel the texture to the stipe. It also sometimes pokes its head up when it's low tide, like this, but when it's high tide you probably wouldn't see it. I just traipsed all the way over here thinking that this was a nice piece of sea lettuce for me to show you, but no, it is a used doggy bag. Keep the beaches clean, people, my goodness. Good old gutweed here, or Ulva intestinalis if you want to use the scientific term. This stuff is bright green, very fibrous, and it grows like everywhere. And it doesn't look appetizing at all, does it? And in fact, if you take some of that, flash fry it with a bit of salt, it's absolutely delicious. I'd go so far as to say that gutweed is one of my favourite foods. Doesn't sound like it would be though. So just towards the sandier end of the beach here, I've come across just a little tiny bit of sea lettuce, which is Ulva lacta, the scientific name. And it's actually barely distinguishable from the gutweed colour-wise, so you could almost not notice it. Okay, so we've got a little bit of the larva or nori here. That's this one right here. Okay, so if you can imagine the sea lettuce as being somewhat of a mixture texturally between the larva and then the colour of the gutweed. So this is the gutweed here. This fibrous stringy thing right here. This is the larva, much darker, but hangs in the same way as the sea lettuce. And then this is the sea lettuce just here, another edible species. And it's only 1 cell thick. And there go my shoes. But I certainly wouldn't forage it from here because there's hardly any of it here at all. Oh, you think because you've got a carrot for a beak, you can take up the whole beach? Gah. If you are going on the beach, please make sure and check the tide times before you do so. Otherwise, you will end up stranded on a rock and die. Okay, so here we have some beautifully named maidenhair spleenwort. So according to the doctrine of signatures, which was adhered to in medieval times, whereby if something looked like something else, it must be a cure, it must be the signature that God had put in to ensure that we knew what it was used for. So the underside of these apparently resembles the human spleen, and it was therefore used to cure ailments of the spleen. Lovely. Okay, so here on this rock we have a nice selection of bryophytes, mostly liverworts. A few different species of liverwort here. They only grow in places that are damp enough for the sperm to swim about all over them. There's an image. So back to the good old doctrine of signatures, liverworts are supposed to resemble human livers. Do you see it? I don't know that I do. They are very beautiful though. Right here we have a nice little floret of buckshorn plantain. You're probably familiar with plantain if you're into a bit of foraging, the usual plantain that you get kind of in waste grounds and things like that. Buckshorn plantain has a few toothy bits just on the side there, and you usually find it around the coast. And it's edible in the same way other plantains are edible. You can even use the seeds to make flour. Yeah, really good. You can also use it on wounds and things like that. You can use it to draw out invasive foreign bodies from your hands or your skin.